Hey folks, welcome to video number 3 in the Adobe Connect series. I'm Rob Folkrod, and in this video we're going to take a look at the fairly versatile SharePod. We've got a few things I want to take a look at in here. The first is going to be how to use the whiteboard effectively. Second, we'll take a look at sharing out various document types, most specifically PowerPoint, but several other types as well. And then third, we're going to take a look at a couple of the add-ins that you're going to see in Adobe Connect on a fairly regular basis. One or two little tricks with them, but it shouldn't be a very complicated video. The first thing I want to look at is the whiteboard, and just getting into it, making sure we get in effectively, and then the various tools that we're going to have available to us. So the first thing I want to take a look at is just how do we get a whiteboard, and it's fairly straightforward. We're going to go to the pods option, and we're going to hit share. So everything that we're going to be using here is inside the share pod. When you open up Adobe Connect, you will more than likely have one already there entitled whiteboard, and you can open that up, and we've got ourselves a whiteboard. Okay, so one way, nice and easy. Second way, I'm going to hide this. Second, you can add any share at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and to the pods option, go and click add new share. Okay. And when you do, by default, it comes in with this gray I haven't done anything yet view. And we can go ahead and click the little drop down arrow here, and from there we can pick share whiteboard. And we've got the same experience that we had before. So you can turn any share into a whiteboard at any point in time. What you want to do though is you want to make sure that you can get into them quickly and easily without fumbling around. So I will generally have one already set up. You see I've got whiteboard set up down here. The only issue I have with the one that's there is that often as my class gets more and more involved, this list gets longer and longer, and at some point in time things start to run off of the bottom. Whiteboard being where it is in the alphabet tends to fall down at the bottom. So what I do fairly early on in my classes is I'm going to pop the whiteboard up, and then I'm going to use the F2 key here to rename this. And the whiteboard is a fine name, but I'll generally just put a couple of dashes in front of it, okay, and then enter to name that. And then when the whiteboard goes away, pod, share, it's always going to be there at the top. I do this with whiteboard, and I do this with the desktop share, and so that I can get in quickly and easily. You may also have a layout specifically that has whiteboard in it. Usually when you open it up, there's one that has that already in there. And I have found that just shifting to that just slows down the class. A lot of things have to update. It's not a horrible thing, but I'm generally going to just whatever layout I'm currently in, go share and grab the whiteboard, then I'm up and running. What I really like about these is that a whiteboard by default is multi-page. You can see down here that I have page 1 showing, and I don't have anything on the other pages, but you can see I can navigate from one page to the next. What I find on here that's really convenient is that once you've done whatever drawing that you're going to do and whatever happens during that drawing, a lot of folks, what I've seen is they will go through and they will spend time and they'll go ahead and kind of delete all of those components off to get a fresh whiteboard. Don't bother. Just take whatever drawings that you already had and then shift that. Just go to the next screen. Don't even bother deleting them. It does two things. One, it's faster than trying to find everything and delete it all off. And number two, it's not uncommon to want to go back to that particular drawing at another point in time. You have just as many of them as you need. Add additional pages. There's not an add new page. You simply go to the next page. There will always be a blank one. No matter how many you add, you can keep going to the next one to get blank pages. All right, so the learning curve for the whiteboard is really not all that steep. There's just a couple of things that I want to show off a little bit. And the first is that inside of each one of these items that have that little arrow down at the bottom of it, inside each one of those there is a flyout menu where you can select one of the other items. One of the things that I found myself doing that I didn't have to is that if I want to get to that flyout, I would click on it and then I would get really close and make sure that I got that arrow just right, clicked right on it. That's really not necessary. The first click will select the tool grouping. The second click, anywhere on there, will pop up one of the tools beneath it. So once it's already been selected, you can click anywhere inside the little rectangle there to get the other tools. So don't spend a lot of time trying to get that arrow just right. It's not necessary. All right, the next thing I just want to take a look at is just adding color to one of the items. Again, not a big deal. We do have the color item selected down here. I now have the ellipse here selected. And I go off to the fill color, and when I click on that, it pops up a little dialog, a little sub-dialog in there so that I can pick the color. One of the things that initially tripped me up taking a look at this is I'd say, okay, I want this to be blue. I would go ahead and click on that. Everything is blue, and then it did nothing. The fill there seems white, so I go ahead and click right in there. I'm good. I'm pretty sure I have a blue, yet I'm not getting anything on the color here, nor am I getting anything there. It is, all three of these columns are in effect, right? So I've got the hue, the saturation, and the brightness of that color. And the saturation is completely desaturated. That's by default, and that's every time. So you can pick whatever color you like. It's really not going to matter until you bring up the saturation of that color. Right, so important step there to bring up that saturation. I have already changed the opacity on these, and that opacity there has stuck a little bit. Generally, on these, I'm going to have a lesser opacity on most of my items. I like a little bit of transparency in the items. It allows me, as I start to kind of draw and stack, and as I put them together, they start to overlay, and it's easier to see where one is and the other sits on top of it when we can use things like that opacity. So it just makes it look a little bit easier to kind of clarify where an item is instead of it being completely opaque. And the last little trick when dealing with this is just dealing with text. So I go ahead and click on the text tool. And nothing happens, nothing changes here on the text tool until you click and drop it. Once you've clicked and dropped, then you get some alteration to the text. So you can go ahead and click size, and I can drag the size up to, say, 37, 33, whatever that is, down to 21. As you're doing that, I would expect that I would see some sort of change over here, but you don't. So as I make this a little bit bigger, you're not going to see anything until you then start to type. This is big. Right. If I click somewhere else, click, get the insertion point, then you can go back to the size, drag it down. Nothing happens until this is small. Okay. And again, it's not a big deal, but it is something where you want to make sure that you go ahead, click, select, then you can go ahead and type. Okay, so I lied. One more tip before you go, and that is just to practice. If I go ahead and click on the marker tool here, it is not incredibly easy to always draw with a mouse, right? And so as you're drawing whatever representation you want to be drawing on the screen, you want to make sure that you just have some experience doing it. Probably the best thing that you can do is just to go ahead and practice drawing, say, numbers or letters in there just to get the dexterity under your hand, right? So make sure and just take your time as you're writing those out. Don't rush, right? It is a lot easier to read what's going on when you've taken a little bit of time to put it together. No one is in a huge hurry to get that up there, and if you just make a bunch of chicken scratch, it's going to be hard to read. So just go in there, and it seems a little bit silly, but practice writing on the whiteboard until it just is something you don't have to think about. You're going to spend a fair amount of time inside the whiteboard, but we're also going to spend a good chunk of time showing off other documents. And every one of the share components, I'm going to add a new share here, has the ability to share various documents. Right? And that's what we're going to be talking about next, or what kind of documents and how to work with this. So the first thing you want to know is, well, what type of files can we share out? And you'll see right here the list, and you can read them as well as I can read them to you. A number of different video files in there. Both flavors of PowerPoint are available. There are image files, JPEG and PNG. One of the things that I miss in the whiteboard is the ability to paste images or graphics into the whiteboard. That's something you cannot do, but you can open up an image file directly. You'll see in there there's also a zip file option. We will talk about some add-ins a little bit later, but that's what the zip there is about. All right, so where do these live? Well, these can be uploaded from a number of locations. First, one of the most straightforward is that you can go and say, I would like to share out a document. A dialog is going to pop up, and you can choose to browse my computer. Right? And so from there, I can go ahead and grab a PowerPoint document, upload it, and right now, although it's not changing on my screen, right now it isn't. There it is. Right now it is uploading that PowerPoint document to the Adobe Connect infrastructure. It's then doing a conversion from the PowerPoint format into its own internal native format, and then it makes it available to me and to all of my users. You'll notice that the title of the document takes on the name of the file that you just uploaded here, so you can see that I have module 1, and that's easy to find. And if I were to hide this and go back into my pods and into the share section later on, I can find it very easily there by its title. Once it's been uploaded, we don't have to go through that process again. It just needs to activate and share. Because it's a PowerPoint document, we can imagine that there are going to be multiple slides, and I'm just popping the size of this here. And so the same navigation that we saw at the end of in the whiteboards is here as well. And as I click on each one of these, we can then navigate through the PowerPoints that are available to me. All right, and you saw the length of time, and I sped it up a little bit, but you saw the length of time it took to upload and then convert one of those slide decks. Make sure that you're prepared ahead of time. If you know for a particular class that you're going to be delivering modules 1, 2, or 3, or PowerPoint slide decks A, B, and C, make sure that those are uploaded and converted before you have to before you're delivering that in front of your users. You really don't want them spending it feels a little bit tacky to spend the time watching you upload that material. So just make sure you're prepared in advance. Once you have uploaded the slide deck, again, it will be available in the share option, okay, as long as you haven't clicked on the stop sharing. I'm going to do that this time around. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. Now that slide deck is gone, and it's no longer going to be found in here. But it is in our second location. I'm going to go to the share document one more time. And we saw this dialog before where we clicked Browse My Computer. Everything that you have uploaded in your class session will be there in Share History. So you can see that PowerPoint deck is sitting right there in my Share History. So I can click OK. Again, relatively quick. Just distribute it to everybody. The download the upload has already been taken care of. The conversion's been taken care of. So that will be quick and easy to distribute to everyone. Third, I'm going to go there one more time. I'm going to stop sharing again. Back into Share Document. There is also a library of pre-uploaded content. Okay, so most of which you will find under the Slides section. Under Slides, we have them organized by vendor, and then organized by class number. So you can pick a particular course, click the slide deck that you want, click OK. Again, they have already been pre-uploaded, pre-converted, so it's just a matter of distributing them to the users. So again, very quick. You can again, to recap, you can upload them from your local machine. You can upload them, you can display them from the history once they've already been uploaded, or you can select them from the library of courses that we already have uploaded. If you are going to rely on that library, do double check that your slide decks are there. Not all classes are represented in there, so don't make any assumptions. All right, and we will hide this and put that away. Now, once you have a slide deck open, like I do in front of me right now, there's a few ways to navigate. The easiest of which is to use the arrow keys down at the bottom, which can allow you to navigate previous and next. So we're grabbing here our shared document section. If you want to jump around, there's another tool here that allows you to see the sidebar. Okay. The sidebar will show each one of the slides, right, and you can go ahead and then navigate by way of simply clicking on those. If you had timings in your slides ahead of time, I didn't, so everything is defaulting to 5 seconds here. But if you had timings in there, you would see those available to you. Okay. If your slides contain notes, those are also available right here. This particular slide deck doesn't, but if they had any notes, they would be there. And there's also a search component. So if I were to go in there and search for the word document center, we would find the 2 slides here that contain that word document, and I can go ahead and click on those for navigation. You can use either the arrows down at the bottom here, you can use the navigation bar and the search. And also, if you wanted a keyboard keystroke, the page up and page down will navigate you one slide at a time. Moving forward, that was a page down. Page up will send us back one slide. All right, and then for just a couple of options when you're working with it. One of the things that I find myself doing all the time is as I am talking, I will use the cursor or such to point to what I'm talking about, right? Get their attention. The problem is that they're by default not going to see anything. So you can point all day long. My clients, my students, aren't going to see my cursor moving around. But we do have the ability to change that. We can pop open the pointer and we will get this little green pointer that every time you click, it will jump. And if you hold down the mouse button as you move around, they will see it moving. Now, it will be a little bit on the jerky side on there, so it will jump around just a touch, but it's really not too bad. But yeah, so you can use that to point to whatever you're talking about. We also have the ability to open up the same drawing tools that we saw on the whiteboard. So at any point in time, you can draw on the document itself. Okay. These are non-destructive, so at any point in time you can go ahead and delete those out, put them back in. They are also remembered, so as I move to the next slide, okay, and then come back to it, you'll see that the drawings are remembered on those slides. Every once in a while, we want to take, as an instructor, we want to take a little peek as to what's coming up in the slides without revealing anything. Down at the bottom here, you see a sync option. By default, sync is turned on. However, we can go ahead and disable sync. Right? And then as I am moving right now, I'm allowed to move back and forth through the slide deck, and my students aren't seeing that. And the last thing I want to point out is just a little bit of a gotcha. If you look up in the top corner up there, you will see a full screen button. And I can go ahead and click on full screen, but when I do, what that's doing is just making my screen, mine as the instructor, it's making mine full screen. It's not doing anything to my students. Right? Now, what I could do, if it were important to me, is that I could go ahead to click on the pod options that we have in the upper corner there, and I can click on Force Presenter View. Now, I'm going to click on that, and that's going to put a check mark in there. If I go back to it, you'll see the check mark there. And now when I go full screen, it's taking my students with me. My students at this point are going to be looking at just the full screen version of whatever I'm doing, and as I navigate back and forth, they're able to see what's going on. The problem is I've now cut off their communication with me. They don't have access to the chat window. They don't have access to the button that allows them to talk to me. So this is not a scenario that I really recommend. The only time that I may pull that little stunt of forced presenter mode, which I'm going to pop out of full screen right now, the only time that I might pull that is when I have a student who's having just a little bit of trouble with the user interface. The same maximize button that I have, my students will also have if I am not in forced presenter view. So right now I've turned it off. My student will see that same button. My student will be able to click that same button. And again, not a big deal most of the time, unless my student doesn't know how he got there. Now he's stuck and he can't talk to me. So if, and every once in a while they'll kind of find their way out, but if you think that may be the problem, if you think that may be the issue, then you can go ahead and flip that forced presenter view and then simply not put yourself into full screen mode. Now your student no longer has the ability to use that full screen mode either, so you've disabled that option. All right, so we have one more thing that I want to talk about today. The SharePod has two more options. It has the add-ins capability, and it also has share screen. We will take a look at share screen in the next of the video series. But right now I want to talk about the add-ins that are available to us. And you've seen several of these, and you see one right now. Sitting down at the bottom of the screen, you see the hands up pod with the icons that are there. There is also a timer pod, which we'll see in just a moment. But first, the hands up pod. The hands up pod gives you a very easy way for students to interact with you, giving you the green thumbs up or the red thumbs down. If the hands up pod were not there, then students would use this button up here at the top, the set status button. And they can click the little drop down arrow there and they can choose to agree or disagree. And we've talked about this before, and then they can go ahead and clear that out. But this gives them a very fast way of interacting with it. Okay. It also gives you a very fast way of clearing all of their responses. So if one of my students, or all of my students, were to go ahead and click the green check or click the red thumbs down, then I could go ahead and clear them all very quickly just by clicking it there. Also doable, if this weren't visible, you could do the same thing by going to the Who's Here pod, and you could go ahead and clear everyone's status. So that's available there. But it is a lot easier to work with through the Who's Here pod. There's just a couple little catches in here. As I move my cursor over the Who's Here pod, you'll see that we get the hands up toolbar, which is mostly helpful. Every once in a while, and almost every instructor does this to themselves at one point in time, they will click the stop sharing button. Okay? And once they've clicked stop sharing, they realize, well, that was a mistake. And then they go back to the pods and they look. And they start looking through all the locations. Where is the hands up pod? And it is not there. There's a really good chance that it is just flat out gone. Okay. The Who's Here pod is an add-in that has already been uploaded into your classroom most of the time. And so the option here, share my screen, again, we'll go back to that same drop down. And to get the hands up pod back, you will click on share document. And most of the time, you will find the hands up pod here inside of the history. So I click on hands up, and that'll bring it back. And it just takes a second, and there we have that pod back. Now you'll notice I actually picked a slightly different one. If you were paying attention, you'll notice there's one additional button on here that wasn't there before. You can have a couple different variations of it if you'd like, but you can customize this by going to the little cog down here in the corner. One of the things that you'll want to do is add the step away button, which is not there by default. You're going to find it in this setting, and much like we saw before, now the stepped away is missing. It's really convenient for your students to be able to tell you, hey, I can't play right now. I'm not going to give you a green thumbs up. I'm not going to give you a red thumbs down because I'm busy. I'm either on the phone or I'm answering an email. I have some sort of problem or some sort of something is keeping me from participating. And so you'll tell them just go ahead and click on that little option right there. Okay. And you'll see that when Nancy marks herself away, that we just have that little away button right there. All of your away students will move themselves by default down to the bottom of the list, and so you just, as you're kind of tallying who's doing what, you won't see them in there. This is the one setting that you cannot clear using the clear all. Okay, so that doesn't go away. It will be up to your students to go ahead and clear their own individual settings there. The other thing you want to do very quickly in a classroom is that you will want to go ahead and turn off all of the sounds that are available. They are all on by default, and while they're cute for the first couple of minutes, generally they are pretty distracting. However, in most classes, the one that I will keep up all the time is the raise hand sound effect. That just, if I'm not looking at the screen, someone raises their hand, I still get an auditory ding to let me know that they're there. The button levels, depending upon your volume, button levels can be set to either low or high. The chat sounds can also be configured right here, so that if you weren't paying attention, if no one has sent a chat message in the past 30 seconds, then you will hear chat messages come in, and we can also see kind of a little flash when they come in. And the last bit is share button counts. When my students go ahead and mark themselves, you'll notice that down here at the bottom we see that Nancy has one thumbs down. I only have one student right now, so Nancy has marked herself as thumbs down, and so I see the counts. This is something that you are only going to see by default unless you go into that cog and go ahead and share the button count so everyone else can tally. That's up to you, whichever makes you happier. One of the things that I do find that gets just a little bit tricky is you'll notice that as I'm putting my cursor over this here, that I'm getting the toolbar is popping up over those counts. Depending upon how much resolution I have, how big the screen is, every once in a while I will go ahead and rearrange the size. Right, and I will set this up to an up and down mode. And when we are in an up and down mode, then as I pause my cursor over, notice it's out of the way and will not be interfering with any of those counts. So it's a little bit more convenient to be up and down. The downside is that we have now lost the cog. So you get one or the other. So if I want that cog back, then I have to go and change the size yet again. Bring that down, bring it over, and bring that open to bring it back. Now, I'm not spending a lot of time in the settings. That's usually something that we do first thing in the beginning of the class, and then we never touch it again. But just know that that's something that you have to look out for. All right, and the last add-in that we see on a regular basis is in the lobby by default, although you can add it at any point in time, and it's this timer that says class starts in. It is expected that when you get into class in the morning that you give your students some indication that, that you're there, that things are set up, and that class will start. So you should probably go in here and set this to, if you've got 30 minutes before class, make sure that you go ahead and set this for 30 minutes. Now, just a couple little things. First thing you would click on is the Set Time button, and you can either drag or go ahead and set the timer there. You have a checkbox to see whether the students should see seconds or not, otherwise they will just see minutes. And then you go ahead and click the Start button, and that will start the timer. By default, when the timer gets down to 1 minute, you can see right now that I have 1 minute and 50 some odd seconds left before we run out of time. We'll just kind of fast forward here to the end. All right, so we're right here at the end now, and when it finishes up, it changes from the 1 minute down to 1 moment, saying we're going to be there soon. Ideally, our students aren't sitting there looking at that for a long time, but it does say, again, at the end when it finishes up, it doesn't just switch to 0. So if you're looking at the screen from a distance and you just see the 1, that doesn't necessarily mean you have any time left. It just switches to the 1 moment mark. All right, and so the last bit here, this is a share add-in. So again, if you were to accidentally go in here and stop sharing and you've lost the timer and you're looking for, well, where is that guy in there at all? It's fairly easy to bring back. Go into the share. You want to choose share document. And what you're looking for is countdown.swf. Countdown.swf is that counter. I go ahead and click OK. That'll bring it back. The name there isn't all that exciting when you pick from there. So again, F2, go ahead and change that. Class begins in, or lab is over, or lunch is over at any point in time, and you can go ahead and make those modifications. All right, and that'll about do it for video number 3. In the next one, we're going to explore the SharePod with its very last feature, which is the sharing of your desktop. Until then, hope everything's going well. Talk soon.